In this lesson, we're going to look at decision making in a Java program. Now, why would we require to do decision making inside our application? Now, decisions are used in countless different places. For example, when a user is trying to log into a system, then the system will check, is the user verified to access the system or not? So has the user put in the correct username and password? So based on that decision, if the username and password are correct, then allow access. If not, don't allow access. So this is just one example of decision making. Now, the decision making in Java and most programming languages is done using a keyword called if. Now, the if statement will decide. It has a criterion that we give it, and it decides based on that criterion, is this criterion true? If it's true, then do something. If it's false, then don't do it. Now, I'm going to make a program to demonstrate the use of an if statement. Now, as you can see, I've already created the framework of my class. It's very simple, again importing the JOption pane package, and I'm going to call this program decisions. I've got my main method, and I'm going to start by creating an input dialog box. So I'm going to create a string method, a string variable first, and I'll call that one username, and we'll get the username from the user via an input dialog box. Show input. Right, show input dialog, and we'll ask the user to please enter your username. Alright, now we're going to check, is that username correct? Is it based on a username that we have in the system? Alright, so the username that we have in the system we'll store in yet another variable. We'll call it system username is equal to bond 007, for example. Alright, so now what our system is going to do is, our app is actually going to see what input is coming from the user and compare that with what's stored in the system, which is bond 007. If the user has input bond 007, then it will simply output a message dialog that says your username has been accepted. Otherwise, it will say your username has been rejected. So how do we go about doing this? Alright, we start off with the if statement. Now, the if statement is followed by the criterion that you are trying to check inside round brackets. So we're going to say if username dot equals, and this is how we compare strings, right? Username dot equals system username. Alright, so we've got if username dot equals, and inside round brackets we've got system username, so that variable. So in other words, this is doing a comparison. The equals is doing a comparison to see if what's before it and what's after it are the same. Alright, now we have to be very, very careful with the brackets here. After the if, there's an open parenthesis. After equals, there's yet another one, and when you hover over it, you can see where its partner is, the corresponding closing parenthesis, which is there, and then there's the last closing parenthesis, which is for the if. So you have 1, 2 open parentheses and 2 closed parentheses. Very good. Now we put in curly braces. The curly braces are not strictly necessary if you have a one-liner following the if statement, but it's always good practice to add it. So what do we do if this condition is true? We simply output a JOption pane show message dialog. Alright, null comma, let's close that, username correct, access granted. So that's what it will say essentially, because the username is correct, it grants access. Alright, let's check if it works. save the file. Decisions.java, again we have to make sure that the file name and the class name are the same. Save that, and hopefully there'll be no issues. Perfect. It's compiled properly. Let's run it. Now we're going to test our app with two separate scenarios. The correct scenario, in other words, where the username does in fact match Bond007, and also an incorrect scenario. So let's try it. Bond007. Okay, username correct, access granted. Hence, we know that the username that the user input, which was Bond007, matched the system username, and we got this box. Now, what do we do in a scenario where we want to display something in case the username is wrong? In this case, when we test it, let's run it again. This time we'll use a fail scenario. Alright, OK. When I click on OK, nothing happens because the username that I put in was incorrect. It matched it, did not match, and hence it did nothing because there's no further instructions what to do if the username is incorrect. Now we can put in an additional clause here to state what Java should do if the username is incorrect. We can put an exception clause. This is known as an exception clause. It's called else. Right. So it means if this is true, then do this. Otherwise, or else, do this. So I'm going to put another J option pane. And like every developer, I don't like too much of typing, so I'll simply copy it and I'll paste it in there. And change that to access denied. So username incorrect, access denied. Let's test that now. So based on what we are seeing in the code, there's one of two scenarios. If the username is correct, it should print username correct, access granted, and if the username is incorrect, it should output username incorrect, access denied. Alright, it compiled properly, no issues there. Let's run it. Okay, let's try the fail scenario now. Okay, that username incorrect, access denied. Hence, what happened in my code is I typed in a username, Java matched it against the system username, found that it was false, there was no match, hence it was false, hence this line did not run. Then it went to the else scenario and this line did run. So this is how you do decision making in Java.